Morning. 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 Are we on? Morning. Morning.
Hello! Ate ako.
To this tutorial is a good deal that you need. After subscribe. Under the meeting section, Manage from your local data location and keep your video option in the left side. Under the meetings section, check the box turn off my video when joining the meeting.
Hi guys, good morning everyone. We're having a little problem with our technical, so please bear with us. In a few minutes, we're going to start our first International Research Colloquium. So please, stay good everyone. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. We're having a little technical problem, so please bear with us. We're going to be back in a few minutes, and we're going to start our first International Research Colloquium. Stay put, everyone. Hey. Ano ba? Push ka na. Hey. Start ka na eh. Good morning, everyone. We're going to start in a few minutes. We're having a little technical problem, so please bear with us and stay put. This is going to be our first International Research Colloquium. So again, we're saying hello to all our participants. It's going to be a very exciting 3-day International Research Colloquium. We're fixing everything. We're having a little technical problems, so please bear with us. Stay put. It's going to be a very interesting start of the day.
Ano di dial in, Tin?
Din dial in, ko nag-record. Pero why ka sa... Din
Sound check.
Hindi pa ito.
Good morning, everyone. It's a happy Friday. So let's start this beautiful day with a beautiful morning and a prayer as well. Welcome to the first International Research Colloquium. We're going to have an exciting 3-day series all about research fever in the midst of pandemic. Let's start the day with a prayer, followed then by the Philippine National Anthem.
Lord of wisdom, source of intelligence, we welcome you to this auspicious gathering, an august moment for the pursuit of knowledge that is offered for the glory of your name. We do not wish to ask you more than just you joining us today, but we look forward to your heavenly grace to amplify the desire for truth, to look up for and become prudent to learning. Keep us grounded in your love and mercy as we traverse a challenging path to keeping the inclination of understanding you and your most awe-inspiring creation. Be with us, O Lord, and descend your Spirit on us. to maintain an earnest desire for knowledge, truth, and understanding you, the guide of the wise, the stronghold of the learned. This we ask through Christ, our Lord. Amen.
So once again, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the first International Research Colloquium. It's been more than a year since the pandemic hit the world, but still the fever is there. The fever of learning and the fever of journey of researching. This is the theme of this year's first International Research Colloquium, Research Fever in the Midst of Pandemic. So again, we want to say thank you to Guimaras State College community. Let's start this with an opening remarks from the Dean of Guimaras State College Graduate School, Dr. Early M. Martir. Good morning, Doc.
To our dear college president, Dr. Lilian Diana Pareño, our vice presidents, deans, directors, other officials of Guimaras State College, our keynote speaker for this event, Dr. Jocaris, plenary speaker, Dr. Laruder, Dr. Balida, panelists for the paper presentations, Dr. Temelo, Dr. Palma, and Dr. Diduso, Ayuri Learning and Development Center officials, participants to this activity today. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning, everyone. Research has to go on despite the pandemic, as it is one of our mandated functions as a state universities and colleges. I commend Dr. Rumi B. Moralista for taking the initiative to link with Ayuri and other institutions, as this is Guimaras State College, the graduate schools in particular. First, National Research Colloquium, sponsorship and cooperations with Ayuri. I know that holding this kind of event, this time of pandemic, is not easy. So Dr. Romy and your team, congratulations for a good job. The event's theme, Research Fever in the midst of pandemic, is very significant to us, as this research colloquium, I believe, can update us with the trends and strategies in the conduct of research in the new normal, as our speakers will share insights in their best practices this time of pandemic. Before I end, let me take this opportunity to thank our guest speakers and panelists for being with us in this 3D research activity, and of course, Ayuri for always there for Guimaras State College. So to our participants, good luck, fasten your seatbelt, relax, and enjoy the 3D activity. Hope you will learn more than this event. Good day, everyone.
There we have it. Thank you very much to the Dean of Guimaras State College Graduate School, Dr. Early M. Martir. Thank you for inspiring us to start this beautiful morning, and keep safe, Doc. Now it's time for all of us to hear a message From the college president of Guimaras State College, we have Dr. Lilian Diana B. Pareño. Good morning, Doc.
Greetings of love, peace, and solidarity. The leadership of this new administration is truly appreciative and is supportive of the initiatives and creativity of individuals, particularly if it is geared toward research endeavors, as this is what we should be working for our full university conversion. Today's Research Colloquium, dubbed as Research Fever in the midst of pandemic, is another welcome development intended for our graduate school clients. Yes, let us double the hype as the pandemic takes a strike. Who knows, we might be able to discover solutions to the troubles brought about by it. Dr. Romy Morales is indeed recognized for his efforts to help our research and development programs and activities to flourish, as this also provides a venue and opportunity for our pool of researchers to present their research findings. I just hope that this would encourage more research minded and even those who are contemplating to actively get involved, because it is the only way to survive in the higher educational institution like Guimaras State College. As had been said, may I reiterate our mantra which says research and be developed. Let us therefore realize the relevance of research in each and everyone's lives as we struggle to thrive in the academe. Thank you and God bless everyone.
Thank you very much to the College President 3 of Guimaras State College, Dr. Lilian Diana B. Pareño. Keep safe as well, Doc. Now it's time for the Vice President for Internal Affairs of Ayur Incorporated, Dr. Gabriel C. de la Liarte, to officially read the rationale of the first International Research Colloquium with this year's theme, Research Fever in the Midst of Pandemic.
Hello to all the wonderful speakers, participants, and administrators of this webinar. The reasons why we are here are the following: to implement the vision, mission, and objectives of the IURE Learning Center headed by the dynamic Dr. Romy Moralista, and of the Guimaras State College presided by our ever-supportive Dr. Lilian Pareño. By inviting reputable and expert speakers, the participants will be able to imbibe knowledge, skills, and attitudes needed by 21st century educators. To recognize some researchers by letting them present their outputs and reward them of their efforts through awards. To help the participants in their ARF and promotion be applying for approval of the CPD credits in their participation to webinars and workshops. And finally, to enjoy and have fun with fellow researchers, inventors, and extensionists in the whole wide world. Evaluation forms will be filled out so that we will be able to know if we will have achieved our goals. Thank you, enjoy, and God bless us all.
Thank you very much, Dr. De La Liarte. Well, again, it is a great honor and privilege to introduce to you our keynote speaker for today. This is the first International Research Colloquium. He himself is an expert, so it is a great honor to introduce him formally to you. He is a scientist one in the Philippine Nuclear Research Institute, Department of Science and Technology. He has extensively published hundreds of his research papers, mostly in ISI and Scopus Index scientific journals. As an outstanding scientist in chemistry and biotechnology, he has won many prestigious scientific awards from the government and professional organizations in the Philippines. He also contributed to the country's R&D policy formulation and advocacy as the former research chief of the Commission on Higher Education, graduating with honors at the University of the Philippines, Diliman campus, with both BSc and MSc degrees in molecular biology and biotechnology. He completed his PhD in chemistry and biotechnology in 2007 at the University of Tokyo, Japan. He is a part-time professor, lecturer at the astronomy program of Rizal Technological University and taught at the Department of Chemical Engineering at De La Salle University. In 2013, he was recognized in Malacanang, the Presidential Palace, as one of the top 10 outstanding young men of the Philippines and was awarded in 2020 by the National Research Council of the Philippines with the highest honors as an NRCP Achievement Awardee in the Biological Sciences Division. His current research interest is in the areas of radiation biology, astrobiology, bioinformatics, and phytoremediation. He is a former steering committee member of the ASEAN Citation Index. He also sits as an editorial board member for the Journal for Health, Research and Society, JHRS, WBSU Research and Journal, and Scopus Index Journal from Indonesia. The Journal of Tropical Life Science. Jakaris is also a popular radio host of the nationwide S&T program Pinoy Scientist at DZEC 1062, Eagle Broadcasting Corporation. His radio program, which has been running for more than 8 years, is a recipient of numerous local media awards, including the prestigious KBP Golden Dove Awards for Best S&T Radio Program and Best and S&T Radio Host. He was also recognized with the World Academy of Science Prize for Public Understanding and Popularization of Science in Trieste, Italy. Recently, he started foraying as the YouTube food blogger promoting plant-based diet and co-founder an art gallery. It is an honor and privilege to introduce our keynote speaker, Dr. Castor C. Jakaris. Let's give him a big round of applause, guys.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Dr. Jimmy Bedano. Can you hear me?
Yes, Doc. Good morning.
Yes, I love your voice. Pwede ka sa radyo, hindi lang sa AM. Parang pang FM. Very, very vibrant voice. Anyway, first of all, I'd like to thank Dr. Rome Moralista for inviting me, and I'm very proud to have known Dr. Rome some years back when I was with Ched, and napaka-inspiring and idealistic ni Dr. Rome, and I'm very happy that he's organizing this symposium to help improve research in the country, especially at Guimaras State College. And I'd like to greet our previous VIPs, Dr. Early Martin, Dean of Graduate School, Dr. Gabriel Galiarte, and current president or the president of Guimaras State College, Dr. Lilian Diana Parenio. I actually had a chance to meet the former president of Guimaras State College, Dr. Rogelio Artajo, and I was so happy to have met him because he was very persistent in trying to elevate and inspire researchers in his college so that they will be able to publish, and the SOC leveling will be much elevated during his term. So I guess Dr. Lilian Parenio is taking the torch and doing her best to put the Guimaras State College in the limelight. Now I will have to share my presentation. Just a moment. Can you see my presentation?
Yes, Doc.
Okay. So for this morning, or for the entire day, I will be conducting a workshop on building skills in writing for scholarly publication. And before I formally begin, I added a few slides just a moment ago, and because I remembered about the university research rankings in the Philippines, and This was released by IRIS, or the Institute for Research Innovation and Scholarships, a few weeks ago, or 2 weeks ago. IRIS is headed and founded by the former director of OPRKM, CHED, or the Office of Program Research Management and Planning, and Dr. Napoleon Wanilio. So IRIS came up with 3 types of ranking for the entire university in the Philippines. One for science, one for engineering, and one for health. So here are the top 10 universities in science. University of the Philippines, Diliman was the top in terms of publication and citation, followed by Los Baños, then De La Salle University, UP Manila, US Mindanao State University system. So that includes not just MSU IIT, which is one of the most productive MSU member universities. It also includes the rest. Naawon, General Santos, etc. Number 6 is UST. 7th is Ateneo. 8th is University of San Carlos, a private university in Visayas. Another Visayan University, UP Visayas, and Central Luzon University, which is located in the science city of Muñoz. And I believe CLSU has received a lot of support since it's being in a science city. It's adjacent to the Philippine Carabao Center. It's adjacent to PhilRI. So we see a lot of research activity going on at CLSU. Top 10 universities for engineering. Well, La Salle came up as the top university, and looking at the profile of publications at De La Salle University, most of the researchers came from the chemical engineering department, and they have a special person there by the name of Dr. Raymond Tan, who is one of the biggest producers of papers in the country. In fact, in 2020 and 2021, or just in 2020 alone, I counted his publication because he's my friend. He made at least 60 papers, all in Scopus, Quartile 1. So he's really a bright guy, and he's done a lot of collaborations and has brought the De La Salle University to the position where it is now. This is followed by UP, Diliman, and then Mapua. Mapua was refashioned by President Reynaldo Vea. And when President Reynaldo Vea, who's also a member of the Academy of Science, came into Mapua, he reorganized the entire university and transformed it into a research-intensive university. Number 4 is Ateneo de Manila, and number 5 is TIP. TIP's president is Beth Lajos, and for the longest time, TIP was a very silent institute of learning. However, in the past 10 years, when its leadership decided that it will be a star university in the Philippines, it invested not just in research, but also in the accreditation. It became the first engineering or technological institute that has all programs accredited by the ABET, and even its computer programs accredited by the Korean Accord or the Seoul Accord. And then you have Mindanao State University, UST, University of San Carlos, and distinctively, UP Manila came in as one of the top 10 in terms of engineering output. It doesn't have an engineering program. However, UP Manila has had a lot of collaborations, interdisciplinary work between medicine and the engineering, which led to the increase in its publication. And for health, of course, it's a no-brainer that UP Manila NPGH emerged as the top university in terms of production of health research, followed by UST, UP Diliman, and St. Luke's, UP Los Baños, De La Salle University, University of San Carlos, Ateneo de Manila, University of the East, and Central Luzon State University. Now here is a screenshot of the presentation of CP David, Dr. CP David, when he presented the rankings. And this is the list of universities beyond the top 10. So you see Mapua and down to TUP as among the top 40. So what can you observe here? Well, the major observation that we can cite in this figure, or this list, is that there are a lot of universities from the regions that are beginning to wake up and be competitive. A lot of universities outside of the top four UP, Ateneo, De La Salle, UST, are really raking in terms of research output. TIP was number 37, and in the past 5 years, or recently, it ranked now number 28. Cebu Technological University was number 27. It is even a newly minted university, is now in the top 21. And Caraga State University from number 21 to top 17. Silliman University, based on citation, although it's not producing as much as the top 10, UP Visayas University of San Carlos, in terms of citation, it's number 9. So it means that it might not be producing so many papers. However, the few papers that it produced was able to absorb or gather so many citations that it became one of the top 10 in terms of citation in the country. Same with the University of San Carlos, which is top 5. As you can see here, it's top 8 in the rankings, but it's number 5 in the citation. And Ateneo de Davao, which is number 36 in terms of ranking, is number 16. Can I? Okay, thank you. It's number 16 in terms of rankings based on citation count. If a particular university or college wishes to reach the top 40, assuming that all these top 40 universities are publishing whose rates have not changed, a university or a college would need at least 6 publications per year just to penetrate the top 40. So it's not that difficult really to be mentioned in the top 40 universities in terms of publication output. So I hope as one of the outputs of this workshop, we would be able to boost publication output of the universities by which of which these participants are affiliated with. So here's the end in mind for this workshop. This is my hope and expectation that the participants include graduate students and faculty to appreciate the elements of a good research topic and apply the knowledge to craft better research questions. No matter how good you are in presenting a paper or writing a paper, if you have a bad material, a bad research topic, a bad research question to address, you will never publish. You will be unable to publish your paper. So it's really important that as a researcher, you know how to look for and frame your research question. Number 2, to better turn a set of results into publishable manuscripts. I know a lot of you have projects. A lot of you have researches and results, but still are unable to publish your paper. So I hope I'll be able to help you fashion or develop those data into something that can be appreciated by an international journal. And lastly, since we're hoping and aiming to find international journals, I will guide you so that you will not be trapped in the the, the you will not be caught in the trap of predatory journals. And I will teach you later on, and we will have a workshop later this afternoon in terms of finding the legitimate journals that may be suited for your manuscript. So as a framework of of this workshop for today, for the morning session, we will just have a lecture and open forum. You will understand where to submit, how to write your paper, and what are the ethical guidelines that you will have to follow, and how's the peer review process. And then I will give a guide for the paper presentations and referee evaluation in the afternoon. So I will be requesting for 2 volunteer groups. A pair, you'll have a paper presentation and then a referee, and then another one will present the paper, and then the other will again referee. So it's a 2 pairs of paper activities. And then finally, we will look for suitable journals for those papers. So here is the outline of my lecture. The first part will be giving some insights and caution on how to be wary and how to avoid predatory journals. Number second is I will provide an overview of the different research structures of research papers. Third, I'll give tips on writing scientific papers. Fourth, tips in looking for suitable journals. And fifth, ethics on authorship. And then finally, a short guide for the afternoon session. So let's start the lecture. Oh, but before we start, I know you're all here to learn how to publish. And you know, and we all know that it is not an easy task to publish. Being part of higher education, it is our task not just to be good teachers, but also to become good researchers and extensionists. And being a researcher, it is our responsibility to be able to disseminate the knowledge that we were able to research and discover so that the rest of the world will, will build on the knowledge or the scholarly knowledge that we have contributed. Therefore, it is a prerequisite that all researchers should publish. It is not an easy task. It's a very difficult task. And it requires skills. Why is it that most people are unable to research or publish? Number one, oftentimes your research, most often the research is not new. So it really uh, goes to the fact that if you do not have a good research topic, it will be very difficult for you to research. Second, most of your experiments are not working. It's easier to publish positive results than negative results. And third, scientific journals have specific requirements, which are often difficult to meet. That is why it's important that you will be able to fish or find the perfect scientific journal to match whose specific requirements match the paper that you have written. And finally, you're just burned out. Burned out. Why? Because oftentimes the faculty are teaching, we are doing extension work. Probably your leaders or university or college does not have the right policy in place to empower you to become good researchers. We will not be talking about how to build the research policy or improve the policy of research in your university, nor come up or validate or evaluate the structure, the research R&D management structures, but I will leave it up to the officials who are listening to maybe be more empathic to the needs and requirements of research so that policies will be in place, such as proper incentives and awards, protected time, and some other good policies can be developed and implemented in your university. Even if you are a good researcher, chances are, if your university or college does not have good policies that will support and empower you as a researcher, even if you're skilled, even if you attend workshops, or even if you have good publication background prior to entering your university, mahihirapan po kayong makapag-publish. Kasi napakalaki po ng role na nilalaro or role ng mga leaders ng university para ma-push ang publication status ng isang higher education institution. Now, I'm going to talk about something that I've observed to be a very preponderant phenomenon which has victimized many researchers in the Philippines. And this is the predatory publishing phenomenon. Way back in 2014, I was able to, I tried to develop a study in the field of social sciences with some collaborators. And we wrote a paper which I've submitted in a journal of education and research. I discovered my experience with the journal was that the paper which we submitted was accepted without revision. So that was a surprise for me because most of the time when I submit papers in a journal, I had to go through a very hard editorial process and which normally took 5 months to almost a year. So I just ascribed it to beginner's luck. Maybe I wrote the paper rather well, and that the journal editors thought that I came up with a very good paper. So I didn't mind having an acceptance with a judgment by the editor for my manuscript, which was accepted without revision. So I decided to come up with another paper after another study, and that was a few months later, and submitted that paper to the same journal. I was surprised it was accepted again without revision. So, nagtaka na po ako. Meron pong sigurong pagkakamali. Kasi, baka hindi nila binabasa ang paper ko at they just merely accept my paper. So, I tried I tried browsing through the internet, and I found a particular person by the name of Jeffrey Beal talking about the phenomenon of predatory publishing. So, so what I did, being a science media person, I contacted Jeffrey Beal, and we hosted a Skype interview live on my radio program, Pinoy Scientist, and I discovered that predatory publishing is really something that is a pandemic in the scholarly community, just like the COVID pandemic. And I was surprised. Isa po ako sa mga unang nag-interview kay Jeffrey Beal after he published his Nature letters commentary on predatory publishing. In fact, when I attended an international conference in Bangkok with the ASEAN Citation Index, he mentioned specifically a program in the Philippines, which is my program, to be among the first media outlets that promoted scientific ethics, research ethics, by exposing predatory publishing. A year after, I found my co-author emailed me and reported that my paper, which was published in the Journal of Education and International Journal of Education and Research, was republished in another journal. They merely changed the name, the authors, and the title, but the entire content of my paper was plagiarized. So ginawa lang po nila ay pinalitan lang pong title at ang pangalan namin at ni-republish by another person who came from the name sounds like an African name, but the affiliation remained the same. So that was the effect of having the mistake of publishing in a predatory journal. So how do we know if it's a predatory journal? One, predatory journals misleadingly present themselves as prestigious. They often give fake accolades or credentials. So makikita nyo po meron yung mga impact factor na mini-mention, and if you are a tyro or pretty naive about impact factors, then you will just be amazed. Wow, this journal must be doing well. And then its editorial board are fake. It does not have a peer review system. They charge generally low article processing fees, and there's virtually low to no barriers of acceptance. Any garbage that you throw to these predatory papers get accepted upon payment of an article processing fee. They normally have very fast turnaround time. They will tell you that your article has been accepted and refereed in a matter of days. So you will be proud of yourself that you made actually a good job, but in fact, you are a victim of a predatory publisher. Oftentimes, the Jeffrey Beal labeled predatory, included some commercial publishers as predatory, which became troublesome. So that was why the Beal's list was scratched down or taken off the website. And the reason for that is some journals are actually not so bad. They give peer review process, but they need to survive, so they aggressively promote their journals and aggressively ask researchers for manuscript. So that was just a business approach by these journals for them to survive. So rather than talking about predatory journals, the more appropriate term is deceptive publishing. So how do you know what to do before submitting your paper to a journal? First is you can ask your colleagues or even your mentor. Now ask them what they think about the journal. They may guide you and tell you that that journal has very low quality and they suspect that it could be a deceitful, a deceptive, or a predatory journal. You can then check the Clarivate master list, Scopus, and other legitimate listing. You can verify the ISSN, the number of the journal, because some predatory or deceptive journals publish an ISSN, but in fact, when you locate them in Scopus, the ISSN of that journal is different. You can check the editorial policies. You can check the credentials of the editorial board members and see whether the editorial board members have the right qualifications to review and be part of the editorial board. Example, kapag ang editorial board member ng isang engineering happens to be in the field of teaching or in the field of let's say, biology, then chances are merong something doon sa journal na yon. If it's not an interdisciplinary journal, you cannot be an editorial board if you're not a well-published researcher. How? You do not have the right to evaluate other research or manuscripts if you yourself are not a good researcher. So you check Google Scholar or check their Scopus listing if they have indeed published in legitimate high impact factor journal. You can check if the publisher or journal is part of an industry initiative. Other specific examples of industry initiative are DOAJ or Open Access Initiative, initiatives to promote maybe ASEAN journals. So if they're likely to be indexed in ASEAN Citation Index. You can check their advertisement and you can check the quality of the website and the articles. Tingnan mo yung articles. Are the articles well written? Are the articles that the journal claim to possess high impact factor are actually good articles? So it's up to you to really judge the quality of those articles. And if you think that the articles are very low quality, vis-a-vis the claims and accolades and credentials that these journals are advertising, then chances are again, this is the journal that you're looking at is a deceptive journal. There's an international initiative that was launched in 2010 called Think, Check, and Submit. So here's the link to their website, and they can provide you a lot of other pointers for you. They can provide you a lot of pointers so that you will be able to discern the type of journal, whether the journal that you are planning to send your manuscript to is a legitimate journal or not. Think, check, and submit. After we have discussed lengthily what journals where you can submit your papers to, I will have to discuss the structures of your research paper. Often, your research papers have a particular structure, and you might be wondering, inimbento lang ba itong structures na ito? Saan ka nanggaling? Well, historically, the first journal published in 1665, that was more than 350 years ago, follows the structure of the journals that we have at this very day. So 1665 is the Philosophical Transaction, which is the first scholarly journal in the world, and the first editor was Henry Oldenburg, the society's first secretary, publisher, and editor. Philosophical Transactions follow the same structure, such as the IMRAD, or the abstract, introduction, methods, results, and discussion. Your introduction follows, and the entire paper follows what we call as an hourglass shape, wherein The first paragraph of your introduction happens to have a generic scientific discussion or discourse until you become very specific, and your discussion stemming from the methods and results will then have as you finish or as the article ends, will be expanding to the general implications of your work in terms of its contribution to scholarly knowledge. So it follows an hourglass shape, and it has an IMRAD structure, an abstract, introduction, methods, results, and discussion. There are some journals that follow other structures. So you have two different structures. You have the air dam, wherein you have your abstract, introduction, and then followed by results and discussion, and your methods are at the end of the journal. An example of this is your plus one. Some journals adapt an AIM-RAD-C structure wherein you have your abstract, introduction, and methods, but your results is combined with discussion. So it has distinct groups of results and discussion, and then it ends with a synthesis of your results and discussion in the form of a conclusion. Later on, in the next slide, I will discuss how you would be able to write your paper according to the AIM-RAD-C structure. So here's are the tips for writing your scientific paper. And in doing so, I decided to get one of my most cited paper as an example. And this was my paper in 2007, which I did as part of my postdoc in Tsukuba University, which garnered 296 citations. The paper is all about the ability of exercise to improve brain function by inducing a particular neurotrophic factor called BDNF, or the brain-derived neurotrophic factor. So, tamang-tama, Olympics po ngayon, and we're talking about getting fit and healthy. Ang study ko po na ito is the first study that tells the world that even you don't have to go through miles and miles. You don't have to be a triathlete. You don't have to be like Hedilan Diaz to train yourself so that your brain will also improve its brain function. The only thing that you need to do is do mild exercise every day, like brisk walking for, let's say, 30 minutes, so that a part of your brain called the hippocampus, which is the site of learning and memory, will start upregulating BDNF. So this will be the paper that I will be discussing while giving tips on how to write your paper. So the first thing that we will have to look into is the title. The most important part of your paper is your title, because it's the only thing or that readers, editors, referees, and fellow researchers are reading. Okay? Often, if you want to publish, you will have to come up with a well-crafted title. Otherwise, if your title is not well-crafted, then nobody will get into the trouble of looking at your abstract or reading the rest of your paper. Okay. So what do we need to place in our title? You need to place in your title as much relevant information as possible. But it's as a rule, your title should not be long. Maybe 15 until 15, maybe maximum of 15 words is good enough. And in your title, you will only have to state the most important point of your research. You should avoid abbreviations that people don't understand and filler phrases and even humor. Examples of filler phrases are, and we often see this in titles of papers, effects of, a study on, an investigation on, a design of. If you are crafting your title, you need to avoid these filler phrases because it's an indication that you are not you are insecure in terms of your paper, or you are not really trained to write a good paper. So please avoid these filler phrases. Your title can either be a noun phrase, a statement, or a question. BDNF induction with mild exercise in the rat hippocampus is an example of a noun phrase. A noun phrase is a word or group of words that function in a sentence as subject, object, or a prepositional object. Other examples of noun phrases are shown in this slide. Most of the titles that we see of publications are in fact noun phrases, but there are also other types of titles such as statement. A statement is a sentence with a precise or well delineated subject and verb, and its advantage in this context is that it can give more explicit information about the results of the study. Usually, statements are suited for papers that address non-complex problems. So if you want to make a statement from the noun phrase, let's say BDNF induction with mild exercise in the rat hippocampus, then we can say we can rephrase it as mild exercise induces BDNF upregulation in the rat hippocampus. So this could be rephrased as this. But I think a noun phrase would be better because there's less word associated with a noun phrase. You can also come up with a question. A question is given, or a question title is suitable when there's no simple answer to be presented. Usually, a question title is seen in papers that are philosophical in nature, or even review papers that try to be that try to catch your attention and make you think. And if you convert the noun phrase BDNF induction with mild exercise in the rat hippocampus as a question, then we can say, can mild exercise induce more BDNF production in the rat hippocampus? I think phrasing the title as a question is not appropriate since my work is highly technical, and that the result of exercise is rather straightforward, and it doesn't have to be and it's not debatable. It's not a debatable topic. So I would really prefer to use noun phrase as a title of my paper. After you have decided on coming up with a good title, now let's look at the abstract. An abstract is usually a short composition, not more than 300 words, and it contains the entire idea of the paper. Abstract is very important because it contains all the necessary data, and sometimes or oftentimes you don't need to read the entire paper and the details of the paper. An abstract is sufficient already for you to understand what the paper is all about. If a particular reader doesn't have access to journals, doesn't have institutional access, the only information that reader can get derived from your study is through the title and the abstract. So it would be nice to put in as many information as possible in your abstract, but not to clutter it with a lot of ideas, in that the abstract will have to be still short. Very long abstract are not attractive, and long abstract are oftentimes not cited by the researchers. So what does an abstract contain? An abstract contains what we call or follows a BPMRC format. The first sentence or the first two sentences usually consist or comprise the background information of the study, followed by a principal activity or purpose of your study. This is then followed by methods and important results, and you end your abstract with a brief conclusion and a recommendation. So, background. Although chronic voluntary physical activity has been shown to enhance hippocampal BDNF, the effects of forced exercise has not been fully investigated. So you show here a little background of what physical activity does to the brain, but it enhances BDNF, and it tells you that there's some problem. There's a gap in the knowledge, and the gap in the knowledge is the effects of forced exercise on the treadmill has not been fully investigated. So that's your background information. And then I proceeded to discussing with the principal activity or the purpose of the study. In the study, we assessed induction of CFOS, which is a gene that is a marker for or brain activity, and BDNF expression, the neurotropic or the protein that enhances growth of brain cells with new acute exercise at different running intensities. So I provided you a one sentence on the purpose of the study. And then for the methods and research, I discussed BDNF RNA and protein was seen only at low intensity running, moderate intensity running, elevated lactate and corticosterone levels, BDNF induction of RNA, but not as protein. So in a way, I provided 2 or 3 sentences to discuss or to give information on the methods and the important results. And finally, the conclusion. Our study shows the first evidence that with acute low-intensity exercise that is minimally stressful, hippocampal activation and BDNF expression can be achieved, lending support to the idea that mild exercise could yield to greater benefits in hippocampal function compared to more strenuous forms of exercises. So that is the conclusion of my research. So, meron lang pong template that we can follow. 1 to 2 sentences of background information, 1 sentence of your principal activity or purpose of the study, 2 to 3 sentences of your methods and results, and 1 sentence for your conclusion and recommendation. Now, after you've written your abstract, you have to also develop a very compelling introduction. Your introduction must follow the hourglass figure. The first part of your introduction talks about general issues. And in this particular paper, it's about general issues and exercise, performance, and its relationship with learning and memory. And then until it tapers to the empirical part of the work. So during your introduction, or when you're writing your introduction, it has to be compelling because you will have few words or in a few paragraphs the task of telling your reader that one, your contribution is new relative to the known or to the body of scholarly knowledge. Second, why is your contribution significant? And why is it suitable for publication in the journal? So your introduction will have to have or follows 4 stages, just as what I had in this paper, in my paper. So first part is I always begin with broad statements that is generally accepted as a fact by members of the reading audience. And I often use present tense or present perfect tense, and this may or may not include references. So I state as the first part of my introduction, the ability of exercise to enhance performance, which prompted efforts toward understanding the molecular mechanisms. And then I started justifying why I need to conduct the study, and I start constructing an argument based on the fact that exercise is known to enhance performance in learning and memory tasks. In order for me to construct that argument, I focused on discussing or mentioning the role of brain-derived neurotrophic factor in enriched environment, and that it has been suggested to be modulated by physical exercise. So that's the time I start zeroing in from general idea of exercise contributing to mental health to the particular molecule that is involved in improving brain function that may be triggered by exercise. And then I came up with the signal word. However, most studies correlate physical activity with BDNF expression using what we call as a voluntary wheel. Ito yung wheel na pinaglalaro ng mga daga sa aquarium. So I stated the word however to indicate that there's a gap of knowledge and I am aware of this gap. So therefore, I intend to state the purpose of my study. To resolve the gap, our study used a special treadmill running protocol to examine hippocampal activation and BDNF expression. So here, my last sentence is about stating the purpose or the main activity of my work. Some authors would also include, aside from stating the purpose of the main activity, one sentence on the results of the experiments, or one sentence of why their results are important to the scholarly body of knowledge. After you've written your results, then you are tasked, or after you've written your introduction, you are tasked to write your results. And with your results, you're here to build or illustrate a story. Ayan. So you will have to find a way to cut your results into bits and pieces so that and arrange them so that if you look at the tables and figures, you will already immediately capture the story of your paper. So when you're writing results, you become a storyteller. When you're writing your introduction, you are a salesman. So you're telling your readers in your introduction, hey, this is the problem of the world, and I have a cool solution. In your results section, hey, after I performed or demonstrated my cool solution, this is how my results, or this is how my activity came about. And you will be coming up with evidences that will support or reject your initial hypothesis, which you stated in your introduction. But most of the time, your paper is not a dissertation. It is not a monograph. Wherein pahabaan at padamihan ng tables. Hindi yan competition ng padamihan ng tables. You will have to decide the most important data set that you will have to include in your paper, and you can decide to leave out the rest or exclude the rest. Sometimes you may be tasked to even compress all your data sets into one table so that in one view or in one reading, the reader can already understand the entire paper. In your results, you are tasked not to comment on your observations, but you are not there to discuss your results, because discussion will be, you have a separate discussion part. You will also have to ask yourself, am I going to present my data as a figure or as a table, or just include them in the text, in the results part? So if you're working with numbers, it's best to show it as a table. You have your ANOVA table, you have specific data on numbers. But if you're interested in the shape or the trend or the pattern, then go ahead, use a figure. When you think that the reader needs to know the individual data value, plus or minus, standard deviation or standard error of mean, open close parenthesis, number of samples, then go ahead, you should use a table. But again, if you want an overall pattern, use a figure. When it's very important to present the precise number, 0.002, 0.001, then you use the table. But if it's not that important and you're just going to show the shape or the trend, then you should use a figure. Always prepare clear captions. So here's a caption of your figure, and your caption should provide a complete information about your data. I often see researchers putting in so many colors. So if you don't need colors, then don't use colors. Just use plain black and white or gray fills. Because if you put so many colors that are unnecessary, then your chances are your referee and your readers would think, ano lang to magito, I wouldn't even trust the paper of this researcher. Also, your figure should be standalone. You need to just look at it, and then you will already absorb what that figure is trying to tell you without even having to read the text. So, example, this is a figure wherein I made a collage of the different results. I have a photomicrograph of the brain of my mouse, my rat, and some graphs that discuss the different fold change in the brain-derived neurotrophic factor. You look at pre-exercise. This is the brain, the neurotrophic factor that leads to growth of newborn neurons. And after 120 minutes of exercise, you can see that the brain-derived neurotrophic factor in the hippocampus was indeed elevated, and this can be readily seen here. I compared low to moderate, and I found out that if you increase the intensity of exercise, hindi masyadong tumataas ang brain-derived neurotrophic factor compared to low exercise. What is the message here? Mas tatalino ka kapag hindi ka masyado magiging stressed sa exercise mo. And even without me discussing this result, or even without you reading the text, you will automatically or definitely find meaning in my figure. So that is an example of a figure that is standalone and it's very informative. And then your discussion. For your discussion, you will have to place there how did your actual results compare with that what you expected? Did your results came out as expected? Did your results actually strengthen your hypothesis or destroyed it? How did your results compare with the results of other researchers? And what logically will you ask next? So it again has a specific organization. The first part of your discussion, the first paragraph, always review the main results and tries to connect your hypothesis to the purpose of your study. And then this is followed by the second paragraph, which will explain the process behind the results, which include unexpected results, possible explanation why your results came about, how you compare your results with other researchers, and what are the limitations of your experiments. And finally, conclusion. So ganun lang kasimple. Huwag kayong matakot na, huwag kayong mag-isip na, ay, masyadong konti or masyadong maiksi ang discussion ko. The important thing here is this. My discussion has to be straightforward. My discussion should contain some elements, the main results, the processes behind my results, and a conclusion. And I should be able to indicate or explain why I got my results and how my results are compared to others and what my results, how I should interpret my results within the framework of my scopes and limitations. So again, I come up with a short, this is from another paper, and you can see the first part of the discussion is simply reviewing the main results. So ito first paragraph lang, even just one sentence. You start connecting your hypothesis and with the purpose of your study. So here's the end of your introduction for the paper. The study aimed to determine whether gorillas, like humans or other primates, respond to the auditory environment and to elucidate the value of auditory stimulation as a method of enrichment for these animals. That is the end of the discussion. We mentioned earlier, kanina, you end your discussion with the aim statement. You end your introduction with an aim statement. And you start your discussion with the results or with the answer to your objective. The findings from this study suggest that captive gorillas may be influenced by their auditory environment, albeit to a moderate degree. So that is the first sentence of this paper's discussion. Then, second part of your discussion, and in this paper, the authors have two paragraphs that explain unexpected results, possible explanations for their findings, and how they compare their data with other researchers and the limitations of their experiments. So, unexpected results, no evidence for statistically significant effect. Nonetheless, there was a pronounced trend. Somewhat surprisingly, compared with other papers such as those that exhibited classical music, non-relevant sounds provided more benefit to the gorillas than ecologically relevant sound. So here they're already comparing the results of other papers. And then one must question the mechanism by which auditory stimulation might exert its behavioral effect. It is possible, so they're providing new explanation, that the sound of these gorillas here may just mask buffering of the noise of visitors. Limitation. Further work is needed to unravel the specific acoustic elements kasi kulang pa ang experiments namin. So always be mindful that you will have to place limitations in your paper. But sometimes researchers tend to downgrade their paper and place so much limitations that when you start reading the discussion, the message that you will get or absorb from that paper is walang kakwenta-kwentang study na ito. itapon nyo na lang sa waste can kasi sobrang dami ng limitation. Wag naman ganon. Wag mo naman masyadong sirain at i-level down ang iyong paper. Just give what is needed. So therefore, your results will have to meld or be linked with results from past research and the limitations of your work. And finally, you bring everything, the conclusion, you bring everything together and provide possible applications for extension. For in this case, they phrase their conclusion as overall. Yun, meron ka usually word na overall or our study suggests that captive gorillas are slightly, although not significantly, influenced by their auditory environment. The research points out to the potential value of certain types of auditory stimulation as a form of enrichment for zoo house gorillas. Possible application. It must be borne in mind that this study was only conducted on a small group of animals. Further research is needed, so ito yung mga public possible applications or extensions needed to determine the long-term effects of auditory stimulation on a larger group of gorillas before coming up with generalizable conclusions. So that is a capsule of how to write scientific papers. Now that you're able to write your scientific paper, you are now ready to look for suitable journals. Often you ask yourself, I have a paper, where can I submit it? Kadalasan wala naman akong pera. Most of the journals that I look for are asking so much money for me, especially those open access journals with article processing charges. The good news is there are two types or modes of publication. Meron kayong subscription model, meron din open access model. Most of the journals fall under the category of subscription model. Subscription means you cannot obtain the article because you will have to pay for it, or the institution will have to pay for it. So, being an author, if you wish to submit your paper to a subscription model of a journal that is based on a subscription model, hindi ka kailangan magbayad. You don't need to pay to have your paper published because the person who will read your paper or the institution that will subscribe to the journal will be the one to pay, not you. Now, if it's an open access journal, so it means you can just download it from the internet or the website of the journal. There will be your institution or your university which doesn't have to pay to access the articles. So for that journal to survive, it is the researcher who should pay the article processing charge for the paper to be open access. But there are some open access journals that doesn't charge and it's for free because certain institutions pay for the open access model. For example, a particular university will invest, let's say, 10 million each year so that all the articles in their journals can be accessed by the world or can be accessed for free. So these are usually open access but free, but it is for free. How do you look for those journals? Well, you can look it up in this website, Scopus, Shimago Journal and Country Rank, Web of Science Master List, or the ASEAN Citation Index. You can also use some servers wherein you will be asked to type in or paste the title and abstract of your journal, of your paper, and automatically the server will suggest the journals that can be used for where you can submit your paper to. And those servers normally uses natural language processing tools and artificial intelligence to look for signatures in your abstract and match it with the signatures of published papers in various journals. So those servers can be Elsevier Journal Finder, Jane, Publish and Flourish, and Springer Journal. So these are some of the journal websites or servers that provide free services that are intelligent or smart. You can also look at Eigenfactor, which is a website for open access journal. So if you're willing to pay for open access, then you should ask yourself, if I'm going to pay this amount of money, then then my paper should be read by this number of people. So Eigenfactor will give you a table of the article processing charge vis-a-vis or in relation to the popularity or influence of that journal. So if you are willing to pay only until this much, then mamimili ka sa mga journals na mas matataas ang kanyang popularity or article influence. So here's a screenshot of Journal Finder, and this is the screenshot of a title and the abstract. And then once you click, you click or press enter, it will provide the journals by which I can, or it can suggest the journals where I can send my manuscript to. I can play around with citation cite factor or the number of citation per journal or the time to decision. And for example, if I'm interested only in sending my paper to journals that can process in less than 1 month, so I can just bring this here, and then the list will be adjusted to journals that can process fast. In order for me to understand or choose the journals, I will need certain information. And here are some of the list of information, and I think the most crucial are impact factor and Shimago journal ranking. Impact factor is a measure of frequency of which the average article in that journal is being cited in a particular year. Shimago journal rank is somewhat the same as impact factor. However, it qualifies the articles or the journals that cite the papers in the journal, or the scientific influence. The scientific influence also accounts for the number of citations and the prestige of the journals where those citations are coming from. Now, if you have an impact factor or that is very high, or a Shimago journal rank that is very high, chances are it's very competitive. And if it's very competitive, it's very hard for you to get into that journal. If you think that you have a very weak paper, then I would suggest you go into journals that have very low impact factor or those that are in quartile 1. Quartile 1, ayan, I'll give you a quick discussion on what are quartiles. So quartiles are generally, you divide an impact factor, all the journals, into different quartiles. So quartile 1 are journals with impact factor or Shimago journal ranking that is above 75%, or top 25% of all the journals are in quartile 1. Quartile 2 are journals that are above 50%. Quartile 3 are journals that are around 50 to 75, top 50 to 75% of all journals. And quartile 4 are journals that are below 75%. So kumbaga sa race, ito lang ang pwede mag-qualify sa heat ng Olympics. Or kumbaga sa beauty contest, ang pinaka-prestigious are those in quartile 1. Ang pinaka-least prestigious are in quartile 4. So pinaka-prestigious sa beauty contest is Miss Universe, followed by Miss World, followed by Miss International, and followed by Miss Earth. Kapag napakaganda ang paper mo, hindi mo isasali sa Miss Earth. you will try to fill it in or try to send your candidate to Miss World or Miss Universe. If pangit, hindi masyado maganda, at medyo may kulang pa sa paper mo, hindi mo ipapadala sa Miss Universe. Kung hilaw pa siya, ipapadala mo siya siguro sa Miss Barangay or Miss Earth. So ganun po yung thread ngayon sa paghahanap ng mga journals. And later on, we will try to bring you to the Miss to appreciate, and we will try to match your manuscript at the end of this afternoon with a particular journal depending on the quartile. So heto ka, trying to snorkel and look for journals. So example, you have an education journal, you find out that you have there's this journal of learning for development that you wish to submit or target to submit your paper to. So you will then ask yourself, hey, that's interesting. The moment you look at or identify the journal, immediately go to the focus and scope and try to read it. And judge for yourself if the paper that you intend to submit your journal, your paper that you intend to submit to that journal really fits to a T the focus and scope that the journal is all about. There's no use for you to send a paper to a journal that has a different, that is looking for another characteristic or another topic. Dapat perfectly match the focus and scope ng journal in paper. Otherwise, you get rejected immediately. So you'll say, oh, my education paper about, let's say, online learning fits that journal. So what's the next thing that you're going to do? Check if it has a peer review process. Oh, it takes 2 months. Sabi niya 2 months for the peer review process to be completed. So that's pretty realistic rather than International Journal of Education and Research, which only took less than 3 days. And then the next thing that you should do is to get into the author's guidelines and start reading through the author's guidelines. And if you see that it doesn't ask money, then the journal is for free. So usually the author guidelines will tell you how much money you're going to pay if you wish to publish in the journal. But if the journal does not include any information on the fees that you need to pay, then it's for free. So hey, it's for free. Then you should look at the editorial team. So in this particular journal, this is the editorial team. And what you should next do is to look at individual editorial board member, look at their Google Scholar profile, look at their LinkedIn profile, and see if they're well cited, if they're well published. If the editorial members are well published, then there's a likelihood that that journal is prestigious and you can submit your paper to that journal. It's not predatory. But if you find out that the authors are not publishing, and sometimes you can't even look for them, they're fictitious, then be very careful of those journals. They are likely to be predatory. In other words, be a stalker when you are trying to evaluate the journal. Now that you know where to submit your paper to, you also know now how to write your paper. There are certain ethical guidelines that you need to follow. And I am here to talk about authorships kasi ito yung usually nagiging problem ng ating mga researchers. Sino ang ilalagay mong author sa iyong paper? So, according to the National Ethics Guidelines by the Philippine Health Research and Ethics Board, actually this is guidelines for all. This is not just for health research, but this is also true for all other papers or all other journals. You can only be an author if you fulfill all the 4 criteria. All the 4 criteria. Criteria number 1, you can be author if you give substantial contribution to the design or conception of the study. kung hindi man ikaw ay involved sa conception or idea, you should be involved in the acquisition, analysis, and interpretation of the data. In other words, nagtrabaho ka sa laboratory, ikaw ang nagawa ng statistics, nag-interpret ng data, nag-analyze. So, kung hindi man ikaw ang nag-conceptualize, nagtrabaho ka, or you did both. So, you fulfilled criteria number 1. Check. Criteria number 2. You can only be author if you are able to draft. You're part of drafting the work or in revising the work critically for intellectual content. Kung inedit mo lang yung mga preposition, in-improve mo lang yung write-up, pinag-arrange mo lang, hindi ka rin part ng author because you did not contribute intellectually to the drafting of the work. Number 3, if checked, then you have to determine whether the final version of the manuscript is approved. In other words, lahat ng author should have read the final version of the manuscript and have concluded that this manuscript is already good enough to be sent for evaluation to the referee. And all of you are agreeing to be accountable for all aspects of the work. In other words, you have all checked whether your data are all complete, the methods are all valid, and that if something is wrong, somebody plagiarized, then all of you will be held accountable for any kapalpakan in that paper. So again, you will have to be writing it, you will be approving and validating, you will have to be accountable, and you should have provided either the idea or be part of the experiment. Sometimes, kung ikaw ay nagtrabaho lang sa laboratory, hindi naman ikaw ang nagsulat, you cannot be author. Okay? Kung ikaw ay naghanap lang ng pera, boss ka, and inutos mo lang yung trabaho, hindi ka nag-contribute sa pagsusulat, hindi ka nag-contribute sa conceptualization, you cannot be author. If you just collected the data, you cannot be author. If you just wrote the paper without even conceptualizing it or doing the experiments, then you cannot be author. So you can just be placed in the acknowledgement section. And there are various types of authors. You have a primary author, a corresponding author, and an equal contributor. Primary author is usually the name at the beginning of the paper. Ito yung person na pinaka nagtrabaho, naghirap sa paper, at pinaka nagsulat. So that's usually the primary author. Corresponding author is generally the most senior author. Usually ito yung nasa dulo. Ito yung pinaka nag-isip, pinaka-senior, pinaka-boss. Na lahat ng correspondence should go through that person. Usually, primary authors, ito yung mga non-tenured. Ang corresponding, dito na magtatanda sa university. So, ito na yung corresponding. Equal contributor naman is when there are 2 primary authors or 3 primary authors that shared in the writing, experimentation, equally, so they can be labeled as equal contributor. If you're an equal contributor, ang points ninyo is pareho. Let's say, in your CV, ikaw ang main author. But in the CV of your equal contributor, that person is the main author or the primary author. So in this case, it is one of my papers. I have so many authors. This guy, Suichi Takano, contributed equally to the work. So I have designated, he was designated as an equal contributor to my paper. Although I wrote most of the paper, Suichi did a lot of experiments for me, which merited equal contributorship. Dr. Rinuwada is the head of the lab and is my advisor. She is the corresponding author. Now, may mga unethical authors that we should be aware of. Ghost author guest author, gift author. Itong unethical authorship dito, ito nagkakos ng basura sa publication. What's a ghost author? What's a guest author and what's a gift author? Ang ghost author is, ito, oh, ikaw na magsulat ng paper. Tapos, hindi kita isasama sa ano, babayaran na lang kita para magsulat ng paper ko. Ito, 20,000, 30,000. Kasi hindi ako magaling magsulat eh. Sorry ha, ghost yon. Hindi siya part ng authorship kasi ghost nga siya, multo. But she wrote the author, she wrote the paper. So that's very unethical. What's a gift author? Ang gift author, para kang Santa Claus. Binibigay mo bilang regalo yung isang paper sa isang tao na hindi naman karapat-dapat maging author. For example, gusto mong sumipsip sa boss mo, gusto mong sumipsip sa director mo, or gusto mong maging mas stronger ang paper mo kapag kasama isang author na yan, kasi makikita nila na big time yung isang kasama mong author kahit wala naman siyang kinontribute. That's also unfair for the rest of the people who work for the paper. So, ang tawag dyan gift author, that is also unethical. And what's a guest author? A guest author is somebody who's placed in the authorship, but is actually also not does not fall in the criteria of an author. Let's say guest author is somebody who's simply supervised. Pwede siyang ilagay sa acknowledgement, wag siyang ilalagay sa guest kasi meron tayong 4 na criteria for authorship. If hindi mo na fulfill itong lahat ng 4 na criteria nito, then you are called a guest author. If you are involved merely in acquisition of money, general supervision, collection of data, or involvement in technical writing, then you fall under ghost gift author. So, ito po ang mga different types of unethical authorship that you should avoid when you write your papers. Now that I have already provided a very long and comprehensive view and a crash course on how to write publication, ito na po ang guide natin for the afternoon session. I would like to listen to presentation of studies that have potential to be published. How do we know if your paper is publishable? You will know if your paper is publishable if you can justify that your study can offer a sufficient contribution to the body of knowledge of the scientific or scholarly community it addresses. Let's say you have a research and education. Siyempre, kailangan mong ipagyabang or i-convince ang referee mo that you're able to contribute to the body of scholarly knowledge. Not to trivia, hindi trivia, but meron kang maiaambag sa kaalaman ng education community, hindi lang sa Pilipinas, kundi sa buong mundo. Okay? And you will have to go through a very rigid refereeing process before your paper gets accepted. If you do that, usually, ang mga referee nito, ang mga journals would have 2 referees, and then you have an editor that will try to evaluate based on every referee recommendation. Ngayon, our after session will entail this. A paper presentation wherein you are the researcher and you will convince us that you can contribute to the body of knowledge. And then we will pick for a referee among the participants. So meron po tayong 184 participants. We will get a referee or a group of people to evaluate your paper and to present later on after your presentation whether or not your paper meets the criteria to be published in an international journal. Okay, we will have 2 sets of paper presentation. So 2 sets, meaning isang paper presentation, isang referee for paper 1, isang paper presentation, and referee for paper number 2. So 2 papers yan. And then, at the end of all this presentation and evaluation, we will start again a workshop on finding suitable journals for those 2 papers that were presented. Now, let's go to the referee. How will you behave? How will you do the referee? And what's a referee? A referee is the one who upholds the standards of the field. You are the one who's responsible for filtering out the wrong and irrelevant papers. You need to be impartial to be able to evaluate well and decide the fate of a submitted paper. You should be able to judge if the paper satisfies the criteria for publication. And you do not get paid. So, ganito po ang presentation nyo as a referee. Later on, you will first come up with a slide showing the synopsis of the paper, just 1 to 5 sentences of the main points of the paper. And then you will give your evaluation and finally your recommendation. What is in the evaluation? And what's in the synthesis? The synthesis or synopsis is the one that will educate the editor or the rest of the participants. In the evaluation, you will have to ask, 1, is the scholarly rigor acceptable? Tama ba ang statistics nito? Maayos bang pagkasulat? Tama ba, enough ba ang number of participants? Was the instrument properly validated? You will also look at if the write-up is organized. Masakit ba sa ulo? Maayos bang basahin? Did it follow an hourglass shape? How was it? I'm Radsti ba ito? Paano na isulat at maganda ba ang pagkakasulat ng paper? And is the paper accessible? Ibig sabihin, naiintindihan ko ba ang paper? I'll just have to cut, if may tumatawag lang po, I'll just have to cut it down. Just a moment. I'm sorry, meron kasing noise. May tumawag. I'll go back to my presentation. Okay, I left in this part of the presentation. So you'll have to ask if the scholarly rigor is acceptable. You will have to answer, is the approach valid? Is the execution of the research correct? Are the correct conclusions being drawn from the results? So kung kulang ang results, nag-match by, kung kulang ang results, ito ang conclusion, hindi naman na-substantiate ng results ang kanyang conclusion, then you will have to speak out and tell them it's not acceptable. Hindi your results are not sufficient to draw the right conclusion, or your conclusions are overdrawn, or you overstated your conclusion. Does the paper do justice to the related work? Meron ba ako natutunan? What did I learn from the paper? So that is your evaluation of our scholarly rigor. And I will provide to you the background or some checklist so that you will have an easy time to evaluate the paper during our workshop. So here are the lists. Is the contribution new? Is the contribution significant? Is the organization of the write-up acceptable? Magulo ba siya? Sakit ba sa ulo? Maayos ba siyang basahin? Do the methods and treatment of results conform to acceptable scientific standards? Are all conclusions firmly based on the data presented? Is the paper too long? Is the paper too short? Or is it just correct? Are all the figures and tables necessary? Maybe the author put the researcher placed so many figures that some of it can just be placed as a supplementary figure, or can be lumped up in one composite table or figure. Do I see an hourglass pattern in the write-up? Is the title catchy, complete, and concise? Did the author write the methodology such that there is sufficient details that can allow replication and enough for you to understand the methodology and replicate it? How is the flow of the manuscript? Do I enjoy reading the manuscript? Look at the references. Are the references up to date or complete? Usually references would have to be in the past 10 years. If it's a classic, if you can come up with a classic reference for a classic paper, if you're mentioning it as a classic paper, but usually your references will be in the past 10 years. And what is my overall assessment of the paper? You will not, when you make your recommendations, you will not say the main result is wrong. You'll have to say why. The author should cite related literature. You should say what are the related literature that the author should cite. The results are weird. You should explain to them why and what's wrong with the results. So here are some of the recommendations that you will have to say. Either it's accepted, it's great, solid work, it's interesting work, it's definitely a contribution, it's excellent in all respects, or accept with minor revision or with major revisions. Minor, it's a positive contribution to knowledge, but I see a certain shortcoming in the paper, and here are some of the shortcomings that I can see or discern, and I will only accept it if the person who submitted the paper or if the author is able to address the major gaps or shortcomings of the paper. Or it's reject. It's a useless paper. It's neither elegant nor useful. It's actually wrong. This is not a scientific paper level. This is just what? A thesis? Or this is just, not a thesis, but this is just scratch. This is a poorly made up paper, and it's so badly written that technical evaluation is virtually impossible. So you can reject. So every author will have to express themselves in a cover letter. So here are the cover letters. Here are the elements of a cover letter. You express your belief that the paper is within the scope of the journal. You state the title of the manuscript. You state the research and why is it original. Okay, so here's the instruction. We will have two pairs of presenter, a researcher and a referee, and two researchers and two referees, two sets of researchers and two sets of referees. The researcher will have to present 5 to 10 minutes. I have to come up with a slide presentation for 5 to 10 minutes just to allow everybody, the 172 participants, to understand the study. Okay? Tanggalin nyo na yung mga unnecessary words or unnecessary explanation. After the researcher presents, okay, the referee will do the critical appraisal of the paper. At the end of the presentation, I will do a demo on how to look for suitable journals. So we start the afternoon session at 2 o'clock. Okay, so the time here is 11:30. So you have 2.5 hours to come up with a presentation and an evaluation. Now, here is the structure. 5 to 10 minutes, your paper will present, the author or the researcher will present the paper. You will have to share the story of your research and what are the data, and why is it an important contribution to knowledge. You will have to, to make us feel that your paper is really good. Okay. After 10 minutes, papasok na si referee. Referee will have 5 minutes to present. One, a short summary of the paper. Just one sentence. This paper is about this. And then the referee will give an overall evaluation of the paper. Overall evaluation is this. Ito yung mga describe natin. Okay? And then, recommendation. Accept in its current form, accept with minor or major revisions, or utterly reject. I don't want to waste my time. So yun lang po ang tatlong recommendation ibibigay ni referee. So, I think we're all ready for takeoff. And I will have to go return to the moderator. And I would like to request the moderator to give or to assist in looking for the two papers and the group of referees who will evaluate those papers. So, maraming salamat po, and I hope you learned a lot from my lecture.
Thank you very much, Doc Custer, Jacaris, for inspiring everybody. I'm sure most of our participants have learned a lot of great things from you. We're going to have a little break, and we'll be back in the afternoon. We're going to have three presentations, three research papers will be presented later in the afternoon. And before we finally wrap it up this morning session, we want to say thank you again to Guimaras State College community, to the president of GSC, Dr. Lilian Diana Buston Pareño. Thank you very much to our Prexy. And of course, to the Dean of the Graduate School, Dr. Early M. Martir, to the Vice President of International Affairs of Ayori, Dr. Gabriel de la Llarte. And later on in the afternoon, Dr. Joey S. de la Cruz will present to us the criteria for choosing those best presenters. And of course, he happens to be the director of Ayori Learning and Development Center. So let's have a little break. Let's have our lunch break.
Can I request something, because we will have a referee session? So paano po natin gagawin yung referee session based on the lecture? Will there be a referee who will, or a set of judges to evaluate the papers?
Yes, Doc, we have judges later on. We have chosen 3 of them who will be doing the evaluation and the referee as well.
Okay, so who are who will serve as the board of judges? I would recommend we follow based on because we're here to simulate. Okay, we're here to simulate publication. Okay, so I know who the judges are. So if in case we can have a discussion together para sa paper presentation.
So the judges chosen today will be Dr. Dolly Rose F. Timello, who happens to be the Associate Director for Quality Assurance of WBSU. The other one is also the Advisor of University Student Publication, Dr. Bona S. Palma. And the last one happens to be the Advisor of the Education Student Council of WBSU, Dr. John Erwin P. Pedroso. These 3 ladies and gentlemen will be handling.
Thank you. And so there will be a criteria for judging the best paper. Am I correct?
Can again, Doc?
And I'd like to get information. So how do we go about it? Because the workshop will require that we will be able the participants will be able to appreciate how to publish. So may I know if how will the evaluation go about? Or hindi na lang natin gagawin yung yung evaluation, yung refereeing process. It will just be based on a standard evaluation by a predetermined set of criteria. How will it be? How are we going to have it? Because sorry, but I was informed this is a whole day for me. So am I already finished?
For the meantime, Doc, we're going to have a little lunch break first, and later on, we're
Okay.
going to have an open forum before we present the three researchers. On schedule, we're supposed to start at 3 p.m. All the three presenters will be ready, as well as the judges. So please let us know when will you be available so that we can have the open forum. Will it be 1:30 or what time will you be available?
I'll be available even after before the presentation. But I'm just wondering, we are having a workshop, so it means that I'll so we're already done. In other words, it's just an open forum. We're no
Yeah.
longer going to seek for journals anymore because based on my discussion with Dr. Rome, I will have to help the participants or these presenters to have them published. So open forum na lang po tayo this afternoon. There will be no more workshops and refereeing sessions. Is that correct?
That's right. So from the panelists, we'll be having all the questions ready for you for the open forum later on. So we'll
So
1:30.
okay, so I get it now. So there will be no more. I will know the it's not going to be a workshop anymore in the afternoon. So it's just going to be an open forum. Is that correct?
That's right, Doc.
Okay, sige. So okay, so that's it. So okay, what time should I be back?
Will 1:30 be good for you?
Okay, yes. I'll be back by 1:30.
Okay, Doc.
Okay, so
So
thank you
thanks a
very
lot.
much.
Mhm. Thank you very much for sharing your expertise this morning, and see you back at 1:30. Thank you, Doc.
Thank you.
So again, to all the participants, thank you very much for sharing your most precious time this morning. Let's have a little break. It's going to be a lunch break for everybody. Let's fill our empty stomach before we proceed to the open forum later on at 1:30. Now, you guys, if you have any questions, feel free to shoot at the chat room, and then all of these questions will be clarified later on when we get back at 1:30, still with our speaker, our keynote speaker, Dr. Jacatis. So again, everyone, thank you. Enjoy your lunch. See you back at 1:30.
Audio